Live on WFLA Now. With a specialized degree in climate, Chief Meteorologist and Climate Specialist Jeff Berardelli is pioneering the way we look at climate and extreme weather. Welcome to Jeff's Climate Classroom, powered by ArmorView Window and Door.
And a second welcome to today's Climate Classroom. Now, today we're talking about something that gets very little airtime. I've noticed this in climate conversations, but it is quickly becoming a concern. Inflation caused by climate change, now known as climateflation. I'm finally starting to see this talked about in the media. It's real, and it's already hitting us due to the soaring heat and extreme weather. We know it well here in the state of Florida, especially. Think about skyrocketing homeowners insurance costs or air conditioning costs across the country, or the price of food like olive oil. Olive oil is one of my favorites as an Italian. Oranges, chocolate. Everybody loves chocolate. Coffee. I drink it every day. Today, my guest, I want to bring William up, and then I'm going to bring Val into the picture too. My guest is William S. Becker, a sustainability columnist at The Hill. Now, his latest article at our Nexstar affiliate is titled, Climate Inflation is Eating Your Paycheck, and It's Only Going to Get Worse. Thank you, William, for joining me.
Thank you, Jeff, for having me.
And I want to bring Val into the picture as well. Of course, this is our very own Val Simpson.
Hi, everybody.
I always say that Val is climate curious. I don't just say that. Val literally talks about climate a lot with me. She really is very interested in climate.
Especially this episode, because I think anything that affects the wallet, I'm all ears. I want to hear it. So I know that you guys at home probably too. By the way, I want to remind everybody that today I'm going to be tracking any comments, questions that you might have for Jeff or for William during this episode. And of course, I wouldn't be sitting here without my trusty buzzer. So you guys have been warned, both Jeff and William, okay? If anything, I'll just press on that. And,
William says that he's tangential. So he goes on a tangent. And so it looks like we may have to use that buzzer to reel him in.
But I'm excited to learn about, yes.
I don't want to digress, but call me Bill.
Oh, okay. I wasn't
that.
sure. I wasn't sure. I just wanted to be.
We made it in the friend zone.
I wanted to be proper. Okay. So with all that said, let's talk about this. I don't think people think it exists. Mm-hmm. And for years now, I've been wondering why no one is talking about how climate change is already impacting us in the pocketbook or in the wallet. And clearly, if you live in the state of Florida or California or Louisiana or really anywhere in the country, it's already here. Am I right, Bill?
Well, you're absolutely right. The physical damages are obvious and getting more obvious all the time, but I'm not sure people have noticed the financial impacts of climate change, especially at the kitchen table. And although there's been a lot of emphasis lately on inflation and where it is and who's to blame, climate change shares the blame, and we don't see a lot of attention to that.
Yeah, I mean, so first things first, let's just, talk about the elephant in the room, which is homeowners insurance in Florida. There are various reasons why it's going up, but it's gone up a tremendous amount.
Oh, yeah.
Something like 40% or so from 2022 to 2023, or some ridiculous amount. Obviously, some of this is due to extreme weather and the increase of it, and the fact that insurance companies are leaving the state. They no longer want to be exposed to this. It's as clear as day. They don't want anything to do with the extreme weather, which is increasing, or the big fires in California. Am I right here?
Yeah, it's not a profitable proposition anymore. And in the article, I quote a number of studies, as you know, and with links to the sources. And one of them suggests that by the end of this year, the average homeowner's insurance rate in Florida is going to be $11,780, which it bites almost anybody's paycheck.
Well, what is it? Nationally, it's something like
$1,700.
Yeah, $1,700 nationally, but in Florida, it's almost $12,000 a year.
Well, yeah, Florida is not only the canary in the coal mine on climate change, it's also the canary in the firing line, because you experience there almost every type of climate disaster that we see around the country. You've had wildfires, floods, sunny day floods, droughts, sea level rise, of course, extreme heat. So you're getting it all. And I think a lot of other parts of the country are looking to you to see how you handle it. And it's difficult. I think that we're finally starting to grapple with these physical damages and dangers, not only in insurance rates, but in public policy. We've been arguing about this for 50 years. And I think we're finally getting around to really confronting it. And we need to, because it's going to not only inconvenience, but eat into the paychecks of Americans across the country.
Val, do you want to
And
take
the
the
other
next
thing
question?
I might say, Jeff, is that there's been a lot of conversation too about how we need to focus, those of us who deal with public policy, on kitchen table issues. And climate change has always been scientific and
Yeah, the
abstract
polar bears.
and theoretical before it really began to be as physical as it is. But this is a kitchen table issue, and we need to begin to focus on it.
Now, something else other than insurance is you guys mentioned that how hot it's getting and how the cost of AC is going up. And we've seen that here in Florida year after year, actually. But without going any further, this past Sunday, weren't we talking about it, Jeff? You said that it was the second most
world.
in the
Yeah,
world.
so it was the hottest daily average temperature we've ever seen on the planet on Sunday, then again on Monday, and then we're pretty close to a record again on Tuesday as well. So clearly, we're seeing these heat waves. We've seen what's happened out west. Las Vegas hit their all-time record like 3 days in a row or something like that. So it's clear. There's an easy A to B. Climate change is causing more heat waves and heat waves to be stronger. We're going to use more air conditioning. Our bills are going up, right, Bill?
Yep, no, that's absolutely right. Air conditioning isn't a luxury anymore. It's an absolute necessity. In many cases, it's a life-saving necessity. So you can't avoid air conditioning bills. They're going to be high. And I just hope that those power plants that are generating electricity for cooling are using solar and wind.
Right, which, is not ubiquitous yet, obviously. We're still using gas in Florida in a lot of instances, although solar and wind are certainly on the increase. We used more coal last year than we've ever used before in the world, not necessarily in the U.S. Of course, it's on the way out in the U.S., but point is, let's not be under any illusions. Renewable energy is on its way up really quickly, like exponential growth, but at the same time, oil, gas, and coal are still on the rise.
Right. So
across
can we
the
keep
world,
up? The question
right?
is, will we be able to keep up? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. In regard to air conditioning, there's kind of a perverse circle there because the more we use, the more energy we use. And the more that energy that comes from carbon fuels, the more we need the air conditioning. So renewables are especially critical in that cycle.
Yeah.
Want me to take the next one, Val?
Go ahead. Yes.
Okay, and by the way, just a reminder that on Facebook, on our Facebook page, WFLA's Facebook page, you can post questions, and we will do our best to answer them. I want to talk about olive oil because to me, it's something that always sticks out. And my wife laughs at me because I use olive oil in everything, even on ice cream. No, I'm kidding, but I would if I could.
Oh my God.
But I'm Italian, so don't mind me. But
for cooking,
here's
right?
the thing:
Salad.
Italian farmers are not happy because their harvest over this past year was the worst ever, not only in quantity, but in quality. They did a survey of something like 4,000 farmers who are producers of olive oil, and they all agree, not all of them, but 70% said that they're very unhappy about this past year, and most of them said that it's the worst year they've ever had. That's not going to change. The fact that the climate has changed in Italy and across much of Europe, by the way, means that a lot of times these crops fail. Well, if you have less olive oil in the market, prices are going to go up. So, I mean, this is one just small example, but the price of oranges and orange juice is going up. Price of chocolate's going up. Price of coffee is going up. So inflation is already hitting us, but people don't even realize that it's climate that's causing it, Bill.
Yeah, that's right. And we import about 15% of our food in this country. So the climate change that destroys crops, whether it's floods or drought or whatever, any place in the world, could affect our energy prices here. And you're bringing up something else, Jeff, and that is with the environment changing and the climate changing, business is changing too. There's a threat to lobstering in the Northeast. Obviously, a traditional crop. There are sugar maple tree people are seeing their trees actually moving toward Canada. So as the
I've never seen a tree move before, I have to tell you. The tree got up and walked. Did it pack its bags when it?
It's something to behold.
You're not going to buzz me for that, Val?
I am. That was a bad dad joke. I'm sorry.
I mean, come on, Val. That was
a terrible
low-hanging
dad joke.
fruit from the
Yeah, I
tree.
should have. I know. I'm just,
Do I
no
get
pun
buzzed for
intended.
that?
He goes again. He goes again.
There we
It was
go.
pretty good.
Val, you got to be on
No,
your
but
toes.
talking about olive oil, I do want to mention something. I like to save $1 or $2, so I do go to Costco to do most of my family shopping. And I did notice I buy it in quantity, the large gallons of olive oil, and it's the brand, the store brand, nothing too fancy. But I noticed that usually I would pay $50 for the 2 gallons. It's $25 a gallon, so it's not cheap at all. It's super expensive, but it's extra virgin olive oil. And
Only the best for Val.
only the best. But let me tell you, it was it went up $25.
What?
I paid $75 for 2 gallons.
Oh, you mean
75
wow, that's like a 50% increase on each.
cents.
Yeah.
Right. On it. And I was like, I'm missing a gallon here. But yeah, I did notice that. And you know, people, I'm sure people like me like to, you know, go to Costco, especially if you have a big family and you're cooking a lot. To save $1. And then here you find yourself, you know, I did not know that this was related to climate change, though.
Okay,
Well,
I have a lot
there's
of questions, though.
There's
Val-
a lot of factors that play on food prices and every other aspect of our life. But the point is that climate is one of them. Not the only one, certainly, but it is a factor, and we need to begin to realize it. And you're reminding me that one of the disadvantages we're going to have with paychecks is loss of jobs because of interruptions of business, for example, when supply lines are interrupted by natural disasters. That kind of thing causes a loss of productivity to the overall economy and a loss of wages for workers.
You know, you mentioned oranges in your article, and obviously we are one of the orange capitals of the world here in Florida. We've had problems with our crops that may or may not be related to climate change. Most of it is disease, although maybe you know a little bit more than I do, whether or not, and I've done a little bit of research on it, but whether or not the warming climate is part of these diseases that are, you know, causing problems with our orange trees. But being that we have an orange shortage here in the state of Florida, we have to import our oranges from places like Central America. They have had one of the worst droughts they've ever had, and the worst heat wave they've ever had was just a couple of months ago. So, this is not just one food, but it's so hard because you're right. You know, the price of wheat goes up because not only climate change is causing problems, but also because of the war in Ukraine, right? So it's hard to piecemeal that out, Bill.
Yeah, it is, and I think that's one of the reasons it's kind of an invisible inflation. It's hard to, these things are really complicated. And climate change itself is so ubiquitous that it affects almost everything we do in every part of our lives, from recreation to the things we're talking about, and to just quality of life as well. But what we need to realize is that it's there and it's contributing and exacerbating some problems that are caused by other things, whether it's the other forms of inflation we have, or as you're pointing out, Jeff, other factors like disease. So we just need to recognize it's there. It's sometimes hard to quantify how much is there, but it all leads to the same solutions, and that's to stop putting carbon in the atmosphere.
I do have a question. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to answer this. This is from David Faisal, and he says, as Earth is heating up, how will seeds grow on farms? Will they develop seeds that can grow in heat? Will we see some of this where we are going to need to be adjusting ourselves into how we're going to grow our food?
Great question,
Yes.
right, Bill?
Yes. Agricultural research has been working on environmental factors for a very long time, as well as pest factors and so on. But yeah, I think we will have to develop plants and food crops that tolerate heat a lot better, as well as tolerate drought and some of the other impacts of climate change. And that's going to be necessary for our survival. But there's a limit, I think, to that kind of thing. And we will see some types of agriculture move north, move to cooler climates, follow the climates as animals and insects and other forms of life are having to do, and industry too.
That's one of the problems we're having with coral right now. They are going to have to come up with some type of assisted evolution where they're figuring out how to make the coral stronger, although that only goes so far. Climate change is running a lot faster than we are in our ability to make corals be adaptive to a warmer climate. Now, one thing that you mentioned in your article is that there's a study that's been done on how much inflation we're going to see through 2035. One of the things I noticed is we could see up to 3% per year food inflation, and then headline inflation could be 1% per year. So then I'm not an economic expert, but in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, the Fed wants inflation to rest at 2%. Is it ever going to rest at 2% again if climate change is just hitting it harder and harder every single year as we head into the future?
Not if we begin to count climate change as a factor in consumer price inflation. No, I think your point is well taken. It's with us to stay for a very long time. And even if we stopped emitting those carbons into the atmosphere today, it's going to be with us for a long time to come. And the question now is not to stop it because it's in the pipeline, but the question is to keep it from getting even worse to the point where it's both catastrophic and irreversible.
Right.
Good deal. I'm going to check and see if we have any other questions from any of our viewers right now while you guys continue talking.
I think there are a lot of people who in this political climate resist the idea of climate change. Of course, there was very little disagreement 20 years ago. Republicans and Democrats agreed fairly closely on that climate change was happening and that they accepted scientists when scientists said it was caused by humans. Fast forward, you couldn't have a more partisan atmosphere. At the same time, everybody equally is seeing this happening on their kitchen tables and in their homes. Do you think that, being that they're saying it all boils down to money, do you think that this all boiling down to money, do you think it's, first of all, something that people can see with their own two eyes or will believe if we say, hey, it's already affecting us? Or do you feel like even though it's affecting them in their wallets, they're not going to be willing to or able to understand and believe that it's climate change that's already causing these issues?
Yeah, I've always thought that it's inevitable that we'll reach a point where climate change is so obvious and so destructive that people will, even the hardest skeptics will have to admit that it's real and that we need to deal with it. And the question has always been, will we get to that point before it's irreversible, as I just mentioned? And it is a danger that can reach the point of irreversibility and catastrophe as well. So the politics have been rough, but I think as the costs mount, we're going to be forced, policymakers and elected officials will be forced to address it. And they might call it something else. They might call it clean energy. Or
Right.
whatever, and not really want to use the terms, but that makes no difference. I mean, it results in the same kind of benefits. But we need to confront it. And this is not a partisan issue. It never has been. The weather is not a partisan issue, but it's been politicized, and it shouldn't have been.
A lot of stuff has been politicized.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, there's a comment on here. I don't know if I should share it or not.
Yeah, go ahead. You could share. Hey, Val, you could share it.
It says,
what's the person's name?
It's from Anne, and she says, Trumpers don't believe in climate change.
Well, I'll just say right off the bat, I don't think that's necessarily the case for, I have people in my family who are both Trump supporters and also understand that climate change is happening and that it's real and that it's caused by humans. So I think it's an overgeneralization. What would you say, Bill?
Well, first of all, Republicans believe in climate change, a lot of them, especially in the younger generations. I've just been doing an inventory, in fact, of the groups that are working on clean energy and climate action from the younger contingent. And there's a bunch of them. And I've had 4 different national advisory committees in the course of the project I work on now. They've always included conservatives and Republicans who are outdoors people or farmers or folks that get it because they work with nature and they enjoy it, they appreciate it. So it isn't a partisan issue. And now Donald Trump clearly doesn't believe in climate change. He said so. And I think people who take his word as gospel probably don't either.
Yeah.
But that's not true for Republicans.
Right. That makes sense. And I think often, even if they, those specific people do understand that climate change is happening and it's caused by humans, it's not something they're going to talk about publicly, and it's certainly not something that's going to be atop of their list of issues that they're going to vote on.
Right.
So I think Anne's point is well taken. Yes, generally speaking, that may be true, but I think that wasn't the case probably. But if you ask these people 5 or 10 years ago, they probably would have said, "Oh yeah, climate change. Yeah, sure, that's happening." So yeah, it's been politicized. It's pretty crazy what has gone on. Yeah. One thing I just want to mention, Bill, off of something you said, a couple of minutes ago, was how we're going to have to deal with this because it's become so obvious. I do think it'll be too late if we wait until that point. So hopefully we can start acting now. But the other thing is when people talk about climate change and people talk about how it makes hurricanes worse, or it makes flooding worse, or it makes heat waves worse, and ask me what am I most concerned about, I'm not concerned about the one storm, the one heat wave. I'm concerned about it happening simultaneously, compounding issues all over the world, and how that will destabilize us as a society. People are already angry that stuff is costing them more, even though the U.S. economy generally has been doing really well when you compare it to other countries in the world. People still don't like that their prices have gone up because of inflation. I get that. So imagine what climate change is going to do 10 or 20 years from now. If people are already at each other's throats because of various reasons, but one of those being that things cost more money, and when there's a lack of supply, and countries start fighting each other for resources, or poor countries can't get the resources because we're willing to pay 50% more, but they can't. That's what I worry about. I worry about destabilization on an international level when climate change just gets worse and worse and worse, and climate migration is forced, and prices are much more money, and now countries are having to figure out how to deal with this when it's really kind of too late 15, 20 years from now.
Yeah, and it's already happening, Jeff. Already we're seeing in the southern border problem that some of the folks that are trying to make it across that border are coming from countries in Central America, for example, where agriculture is just dead. They can't really grow enough crops to make a living anymore because of heat and drought. But there's another angle here that you reminded me of, and that is taxes. FEMA's already run out of money, or is about to handle all the natural disasters or the weather disasters that are happening this year.
That's hard to believe. And that in itself can be a climate classroom because the hurricane season hasn't even really started yet. Just wait until 3-4 weeks from now.
That's right. And taxes are going to have to go up to pay for disaster response and recovery and preparation and all of that. And at some point, people are going to feel that as well. There's going to be that kind of inflation. So we're headed for a rough spot. I think the immigration problem is going to be very, very tough because the predictions by people who study this stuff is that there's going to be tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people trying to come across especially our southern border, because for sheer survival. And the thing is, we have the same survival problem here. I'm not sure the weather is going to be, as time goes on, all that much better here. But that's going to be part of the immigration problem.
Well, I can tell you guys that in the comments, folks are talking amongst themselves. Some are saying that, it's normal to see temperatures the way that we're seeing them in the summertime. However, we're getting some interaction amongst them, and they're saying that, it's not normal to see heat index values at 110 like we've been seeing here at home constantly.
The data supports here in Tampa. The number of 90-degree days has doubled since about 1980 in the last 40 years, okay? So the data supports, in terms of heat index days, we're seeing a lot more heat index days above 105 and 110. What we saw out west, that heat wave where Las Vegas had didn't just beat their all-time record by a degree. They beat it by 3 degrees, and then they did it again like 2 days in a row.
Yeah,
the crazy stuff we're seeing has never been seen before. And it's undoubtedly, and it's pretty simple, right? If you raise the global air temperature by over 2 degrees Fahrenheit, and we already have, then you're building your heat wave off a foundation that's not here, but here. So of course it's going to be hotter. And of course our air conditioning bills are going to go up. And of course it's going to be harder to grow stuff.
A good friend of mine calls it climate weirding.
Catherine Hayhoe?
No, that's, well, it could have come from her, but Hunter Lovin is what I'm thinking about. But, it used to be that, it still is, that climatologists would tell us that we're measuring 30-year patterns here. There's weather variability, and we understand that. But you need to track the long-term trends. And we're there. We can now track a 30-year trend or more in this weather and see that it's the new reality.
Yeah, it is. And
not to mention the sea surface temperatures that we're seeing in the Atlantic right now. That's my niche. Weather's my niche. And we're seeing in June temperatures in the Atlantic Ocean that typically we would see in August or beginning of September.
That's right. Yeah. Go ahead, Bill.
Oh, I'm sorry. And I was just writing about this. Here's something to think about to end on, not end, but to strike another unhappy note. While we've been messing around and failing to really confront climate change the way it has to be, scientists have discovered there's 9 critical safe operating spaces, they call them. There are different cycles and different ecosystems on which life depends, as we know it on the planet. And we've crossed the boundary into 6 of them, climate change being only one. So the point is that there's a lot that we have to do to make human development more compatible with the natural world.
I would imagine
And
biodiversity is one of them.
that's exactly right. And so we need to get this problem solved and move on to a couple others, because this isn't the only way that we're threatening the biosphere right
Well, can
now.
we get it done by tomorrow, you think? I mean, because honestly, if climate change is going to take a long time to solve, we're going to have to walk and chew gum, as they say.
Yeah.
But
Well,
it
as soon
seems,
as I get off with you, I'll go back to work on it, and I'll let you know how it
All
turns
right,
out.
let me know how it pans out.
I
Val, you want to
know.
be the person to ask the last question?
yeah, I do want to say something, because I know that we have a lot of scientists working really hard towards coming up with solutions in terms of climate change. But what can the regular folk do? What can we do to help?
Well, there's an election coming up, and that's one big thing. Because in this representative democracy, we delegate a lot of these decisions to the people we elect, and they have more authority than we do day by day to change things. But the lifestyle changes, a lot of them painless. Look into an electric vehicle next time you're going to buy one. The costs are coming down. They're almost zero to operate or to maintain, and they're really cost effective. The old things about adjusting your thermostat to tolerate a little bit more heat or a little bit more cold. Um, uh, Getting energy efficient appliances when you next buy some, looking for those Energy Star appliances, and all of that kind of thing, trying to insulate your home. Um, all of the things that we do that use energy in effect, because most of our energy comes from fossil fuels, affect the climate. So just watching how we use energy and resources is a good way to start.
I've been asked this question so many times in my career over the past decade or so, and every year I have a slightly different answer. This is obviously a systemic problem, so this needs to be handled by governments and corporations. But we are the people, right? We theoretically have the power, so we hopefully make the decisions. But one thing that I've learned, and Val and I've talked about this, and it's gonna sound corny because it's corny every time I say it, but I would say the best thing you can do at home is to care. Take enough time to just simply care and learn about the issues that we're dealing with. Because oftentimes, and I'm not going to tell you to stop eating meat. Look, I don't eat meat, but I'm never going to say that to someone. They're going to probably do the opposite, right? I'm not going to tell you to drive an electric car. I'm not going to take your gas stove away from you. I'm not going to mandate anything. I'm just going to say, just do what you can. Everybody's different. You know, some people might be willing to drive an electric car. Others may be willing to put solar panels on their roof. Whatever, maybe you can't afford any of that stuff, but you just want to be vocal and talk to your parents and your grandparents and your siblings and your community. Maybe you want to organize in the community. I just simply say, care enough to think about what you personally can do, and hopefully that's a seed that you plant and it can spread.
No, you're right. And you're triggering another thought too, and that is that ecosystems, that just the things around us, from wetlands to lawns to the permeable surfaces in our communities, are all ways to help adapt to climate change. And if you just take care of nature in your community and in your yard, you're helping. And it's just in a very small way, but a meaningful way. So ecosystem restoration is on my agenda too. Bringing back all those that we've destroyed that provide really invaluable services to us,
And I think
including
that's something we can all agree on, right, Bill? I mean, most
Yeah.
people, conservatives, Democrats, all want to take care of the land, and they all believe that we should, reduce pollution. So these are things that we can agree on.
Absolutely.
All great suggestions, you guys.
So once again, I just want to thank you, Bill, for joining us. You can read his article in The Hill. Let me get the article title once again. It is called "Climate Inflation is Eating Your Paycheck, and It's Only Going to Get Worse." So check it out, because I found it very informative. I was so happy to see it, Bill, because I think the media has not talked about this at all. I've seen it very rarely. You're one of the first articles that I've seen on this specifically in a while, at least. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Thank you for giving me a chance to talk about it, and Val, you as well. It's been a pleasure to meet you both.
Yes, and I want to thank Val, too, for joining us as well, as we typically do every week. And I want to thank you at home. Here's what you can do. Go to WFLA.com, click on the Climate Classroom link. It's under Weather. So under the Weather link, there's a tab that'll come down, say Climate Classroom, if you want to view this episode. We're also going to send this episode to YouTube, and then eventually it can be listened to as a podcast as well, sometime probably later today on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Again, thank you very much for joining us here on Climate Classroom, and we'll see you again next week for a different topic. And we'll be focusing once again, as we normally do, on climate. Thank you very much.
Watch or listen to Jeff's Climate Classroom, powered by Armor View Window and Door on WFLA social media platforms, and find Jeff's climate reports on WFLA.com.